in a quiet suburb of Ohio, where tree-lined streets frame neatly trimmed lawns, 66-year-old Frank began to notice something he had never expected. His body was healthy. His checkups were normal. But something essential in his life was quietly fading. Frank no longer felt that familiar spark each morning. When he sat beside his wife on the couch to watch the news, he noticed the silence between them, not because of an argument, but because they both seemed to have forgotten how to touch. No harsh words were exchanged. Nothing had changed overnight. But he knew something was no longer the same. For the first time, Frank found himself asking a question he had never dared to voice. Am I becoming invisible? In their 60s, many American men like Frank still take on part-time work. They repair lawn mowers. They play golf on weekends. But at night, when everything slows down, many begin to feel a quiet emptiness. Not because they no longer love their wives, not because they are no longer men, but because they no longer feel like themselves. In a culture where men are taught to be strong, few talk about losing connection. But if you have ever found yourself feeling nothing when hugged, or not responding when touched, you are not alone, and no, it is not because you have become weaker, or because the love has faded. More likely, your body simply is not sending enough blood to keep those tender feelings alive. Circulation, often thought of as a matter of the heart, actually affects emotion, sensation, and closeness. When the small blood vessels around the pelvis begin to narrow, even a gentle hug can lose its spark. The good news is, the body can bounce back, and nature, if chosen wisely, can be the key to restoring that flow, without medication, without pressure. Frank's story is just one among millions, unfolding in quiet suburbs, small apartments, and retirement communities across America, in places where men still love, still long to live fully. Sometimes all they need is for someone to say, "You are not done. Your body is just slowing down a bit, and you absolutely can come alive again." 1. When small blood vessels begin to close. The human body is a vast network of blood vessels, from large arteries like interstate highways to tiny capillaries thinner than a strand of hair. For men over 60, the real danger does not lie in the highways, but in the small roads, the microvessels in the pelvic area. These are the delicate pathways that deliver oxygen and nutrients to the tissues responsible for emotion, sensation, and intimacy. When we are young, these vessels are elastic, soft, and work almost flawlessly. But over time, due to aging, stress, poor eating habits, and lack of movement, they begin to thicken, harden, and quietly shut down. There is no warning, no pain, no numbness. But gradually, you begin to notice the mornings feel different. A touch no longer sends a ripple. The gaze of your partner no longer stirs something deep. Your reactions slow, and what is most concerning is that many people think this is just part of getting older, that love after 60 is a luxury, that the body winding down is inevitable. But science says otherwise. Studies show that in most cases of lost connection in older adults, the real culprit is poor circulation, not hormones or emotions. And the hopeful truth is, circulation can be restored. If you support it the right way, no need for powerful medications, no need for sudden force. All you have to do is help the blood find its old path again. It is like clearing a riverside path, long forgotten and overgrown. You gently clear the way, and the blood can flow again, carrying oxygen, hormones, and feelings back to where they belong. That is why traditional herbs like ginseng, ginkgo biloba, horny goatweed, and tribulus are being brought back into the conversation, not as miracle drugs, but as gentle companions, capable of quietly awakening the forgotten. Currents within an aging body. Of course, there is no shortcut, no promise of transformation in a week. But if you have ever felt yourself fading, no longer the man you once knew, then understand this. Your body is still calling you back, not with a loud cry, but with subtle signs. An unexplained coldness between you and your partner, a silence within your own self, a numbness even in a loving embrace. And if you can hear that call, then it may be time to talk about what nature can offer, not to change you, but to help you return to who you truly are. 2. Mr. Samuel and Ginseng. awakening a man who thought he had gone silent. Mr. Samuel is a black man from Louisiana. He is 67 years old and spent more than 30 years driving a federal bus before retiring with his wife in a quiet neighborhood in Jacksonville, Florida. He does not smoke, rarely drinks, and takes a morning walk around the park near his home each day. From the outside, he looks like a healthy, independent senior, the kind of man his children never have to worry about. But there is one thing he has never told anyone, not even his wife. He no longer feels like a real man, not because of illness, not because he stopped loving, but because of a feeling that once came with energized mornings and heart-pounding embraces. Those feelings had vanished without warning, as if his body had gone into silent mode. He did not feel weak. He just did not feel alive. He no longer wanted, and that scared him in a quiet way. One day during a routine checkup, Samuel quietly told his family doctor, "I feel like I have lost a part of myself, and I do not know how to get it back." After a few gentle questions, the doctor gave him a warm smile and said, "I want you to try something that is not a medication. It is ginseng, but not just any kind. Look for Korean red ginseng, standardized extract, 600 milligrams each morning." Samuel was skeptical, but he listened. He did not expect much. He took it each morning. While brewing coffee and playing a soft jazz tune, he loved back in school. The first week, nothing changed. In the second week, his sleep grew deeper. In the third week, one morning, he found himself humming an old song. Then he looked at his wife, still peacefully asleep beside him, and felt a strange warmth. It was not excitement like in his youth, he later said. It was the feeling of being present, being alive, being able to love again. After 5 weeks, Samuel returned to his doctor. He talked not just about intimacy returning, but about his mind feeling clear, his heart feeling lighter, and his spirit more at ease. He started calling old friends, inviting them to go fishing. He fixed up his old speakers to play vinyl records with his wife. His body had not transformed overnight, but something inside had opened up again. His blood had found its path, and along with it came memory, emotion, and the part of himself he thought had been asleep forever. Modern science confirms that ginseng, especially Korean red ginseng, contains ginsenosides, compounds that increase nitric oxide, helping relax small blood vessels and improve circulation to areas of the body that often fade after 60. But to Samuel, ginseng was not a supplement. It was his body's whisper. "I am still here. I am just waiting for you to wake me up." 3. Mr. Thomas and Ginkgo biloba. When feelings need blood to live. Mr. Thomas is a former Navy veteran. He lives alone in a small apartment in Seattle, ever since his wife passed away 8 years ago. At 70, he is lean but strong, with silver hair and a disciplined presence. He rises early, folds his blanket into neat squares, drinks his coffee black, and reads the newspaper instead of looking at a screen. To his neighbors, he is the picture of a respectable man. But there are things he has never told anyone, like how he no longer feels anything when he holds someone's hand, like how he sometimes feels himself drifting, even though he is still alive. "I don't feel pain, I don't feel tired, I just feel like a shadow," he once said, his eyes unfocused. When his niece, a nurse, suggested he try ginkgo biloba, a traditional herb known to support circulation, he gave a soft chuckle. "My cousin used to take that, to remember how to get home. But after one long night of sleeplessness, he thought, what do I have to lose?" So he started taking it. 20 milligrams, twice a day, with the same quiet discipline. He learned in the Navy, no expectations, no hope for change. The first week, everything remained the same. But by the third week, one morning while shaving, he looked into the mirror, and for the first time in years, he saw something in his eyes. They were no longer blank, no longer lost. He played an old jazz record, stepped out onto his balcony, and felt it. The sunlight that morning was warmer, his hands were warmer, and his sense of self was clearer. Though no one was beside him, he felt present in his own life again. According to his niece, ginkgo biloba is one of the few herbs scientifically shown to improve microcirculation, especially to the brain, the skin, and the pelvic region areas often neglected after 60. Ginkgo does not create fireworks. It quietly reopens long-forgotten streams. It is like clearing an old forest path, one that never disappeared, but has been covered in dust for too long. For Mr. Thomas, the miracle was not in sudden physical reaction or instant stimulation. The miracle was this: when someone touched his shoulder, he no longer felt suffocated. When he went on walks, he found himself watching longer, as a woman on the porch of the nursing home, knitted quietly in the sun. When he picked up the phone and called an old friend, he said, "I don't know why, but lately, I feel alive again." We often think emotions belong to the heart, but emotions are also carried by the blood. When blood no longer reaches the deeper places in the body, the brain, the pelvis, the seat of memory and sensation, people begin to lose themselves. Ginkgo will not make you young again, but for Mr. Thomas, it helped him recover the part of himself that had fallen away with time. The part that once knew how to be moved, the part that once looked at someone and felt the heartbeat respond. Mr. Martin and horny goat weed, not about performance, but presence. In the suburbs of Milwaukee, Mr. Martin, a 72-year-old white man and former carpenter, lives with his wife in a wooden house he built with his own hands back in 1980. They still cook together, watch TV, tend the garden, and sleep in the same bed. But lately, he has felt the distance between them growing clearer, even though no one has left. "We sit beside each other every night," he said in a flat tone, "but it feels like there's a thick sheet of glass between us, and neither of us can touch the other anymore." Mr. Martin has no major health problems, but for the past few years, he hasn't felt any reaction when his wife hugs him. He no longer feels his body stir when she laughs. And what saddens him the most is not the physical changes, but the sense that he has somehow lost the right to love. One afternoon, while watching television, he heard a doctor mention an odd-sounding name: horny goat weed. At first, he laughed. Sounds like a joke, he thought. But when the expert explained that this herb wasn't about quick stimulation, but about gently restoring natural circulation and male hormones, Mr. Martin started to listen. After a few days of research, he decided to give it a try. He took 500 milligrams a day, standardized with 10% acarian right after breakfast, with a warm glass of water, just as recommended. 2 weeks passed. Nothing remarkable happened. But in the third week, he began to sleep better, wake up without feeling tired. And most of all, he started to feel present again. One evening, as his wife sat beside him, instead of remaining silent as usual, he reached over and put his arm around her. She turned to him in surprise, and he said, "I don't know why, but lately I've been missing you so much." It wasn't a grand declaration, but for them, it was the first time in years. They weren't just sitting side by side, but truly together. Horny goatweed, with its active compound acarian, has been studied as a natural inhibitor of the PDE5 enzyme, similar to how well-known medications work, but in a gentler way, without causing sudden pressure spikes. It does not aim to boost performance, but to reawaken the body's natural rhythms. It also helps regulate testosterone, which often drops sharply after 60, and lowers cortisol, the stress hormone that quietly kills desire. For Mr. Martin, the greatest effect was not about function. It was in the return of eye contact, in his wife holding his hand just a little longer. It was in the realization that he didn't need to prove anything. To be a man, all he needed was to truly be there, in the moment, with his body, his gaze, and his heart. And for him, that was enough, more than he had dared to hope for. Mr. Leonard and Tribulus, when strength no longer needs to prove itself. Mr. Leonard is 74 years old. He lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico. A Mexican-American man, he once owned a small watch repair shop, tucked away on an old cobbled street, where the ticking of second hands still echoed like the sound of time itself. 7 years ago, his wife passed away after a sudden stroke. Since then, Mr. Leonard has lived quietly, spending his days reading, his evenings making mint tea, and listening to the radio. People describe him as calm, grounded, and wise, but no one knows that for all those years, he has not felt like the real Leonard. It was not grief that unsettled him. It was the deep and silent sense that he was no longer a man in the way that only he could understand. When a kind woman from his senior community invited him out for a walk, he declined, not because he did not want to, but because he felt not enough. I don't know how to explain it, he told his family doctor. I'm healthy, no illness, but I don't feel like I have fire in me anymore. His elderly doctor responded gently. There's an herb called tribulus. It's been used for hundreds of years in Europe and Asia. It's not as strong as synthetic hormones, but it's just enough to remind your body of who it used to be. Mr. Leonard agreed, not because he hoped for change, but because he felt himself slowly disappearing. Each morning, he began taking 500 milligrams of tribulus terrestris, standardized to 45% saponins, just as the doctor instructed. The first week passed quietly. By the second week, he felt more eager to take walks, his steps a little quicker. By the fourth week, he became interested in repairing an old pocket watch he had forgotten in a drawer. By the sixth week, he picked up the phone and invited the woman to have tea. For the first time in many years, he smiled while speaking. Tribulus does not work like a drug. It does not deliver a jolt of testosterone. Instead, it signals the pituitary gland to naturally release more luteinizing hormone, which in turn helps the body produce testosterone on its own. This gentle process improves energy, restores blood flow to the pelvic region, and most importantly, helps a man feel present in himself, confident, without having to prove anything. Mr. Leonard did not become young again. He did not have a magical renewal, but he began to stand taller. His conversations grew longer. His hands felt warmer when he held someone else's. And on a sunny afternoon, as the woman gently rested her head on his shoulder, he realized something. He did not need to puff up his chest to feel like a man again, because true strength does not come from how firm the body is. It comes from the ability to be fully present, clear, and gentle in front of another human being. Tribulus did not change Mr. Leonard's life. It simply helped him return to the man he had always been, before grief, before age, before silence made him forget. 6. Conclusion. Intimacy is not a luxury. It's part of living fully. We often believe that once we reach 60 or 70 desire, the need to be touched, to be loved, are things we should leave behind, because the body isn't as strong as it once was, because our days are filled with doctor visits, medications, and caring for grandchildren, because everyone seems to think, at this age, love is too late. But that's not true. Intimacy is not a luxury. It's a vital part of feeling alive, and you are never too old for that. No one is too late to hold someone's hand a little longer. No one is too old for their heart to stir at a gentle glance. No one needs to hide their longing, just because others say, "You're at that age now." The truth is, your body is simply slowing down. It has never stopped wanting to love. The small vessels just need a reminder. The quiet emotions simply need to be stirred, and the deepest feelings can return. If you allow them to live again, if you still feel something within, you hasn't gone completely quiet, then don't stay silent. Begin with a cup of herbal tea in the morning, a gentle reach for your partner's hand, a soft, honest conversation. It doesn't take much, just your presence. With your heart, your gaze, and the warmth of your still beating blood. And if something you heard today touched something in you, don't hesitate to leave a comment. And share your thoughts with us at Light of Wise Elders. This is where we tell gentle, simple, true stories just like yours. Subscribe to join us each week as we slow down together to feel more deeply. Because what truly matters in life isn't your age. It's whether you still know how to love and still dare to live fully.